Welcome back to my channel, and if you are visiting for the first time, you are also highly welcome. In this lecture, we'll be looking at the blood supply of the large intestine. The large intestine is the terminal region of the gastrointestinal tract, and it is this region that is highlighted in black. I have done the lecture on the large intestine. If you've not checked that lecture up, please kindly go and do so as to keep yourself updated. In this lecture, we'll be looking at the blood supply of the large intestine. The large intestine is supplied by branches from two vessels, and this includes the superior mesenteric artery and also the inferior mesenteric artery. The superior and the inferior mesenteric artery are branches from the abdominal aorta. So let's say this is the abdominal aorta highlighted in red here. We have the superior mesenteric artery emerging at this region, and the superior mesenteric artery will supply sub-regions of the large intestine, and this include the cecum, the appendix, the ascending colon, and also the right two-thirds of the transverse colon. Then the second branch that would emerge from the abdominal aorta is the inferior mesenteric artery, and this will emerge just inferior to the superior mesenteric artery, just as the name implies, and this will supply the remaining region of the transverse colon, which is the left one-third, the descending colon, the sigmoid colon, the rectum, and also the anal canal. So you can see that these two vessels are giving off branches to supply the different regions of the large intestine. So let's dive into this to see how these branches emerge, and also to further explain on the different regions of the large intestine that they supply. Looking at the superior mesenteric artery, we already said that the superior mesenteric artery is a branch from the abdominal aorta. So it emerges from the anterior region of the abdominal aorta at the level of L1 lumbar vertebra. So let's say that this is the abdominal aorta that is highlighted here, this big pipe highlighted in red. We have the superior mesenteric artery emerging at the anterior surface of the abdominal aorta. So this is the emergence here, and this is where the superior mesenteric artery emerges from. So as it emerges, it supplies midgut derivatives. So it supplies organs that emerge or are derived embryologically from the midgut. And these include the lower part of the duodenum. The duodenum is the initial segment or the first region of the small intestine. It will also supply the jejunum and also the ileum. So it supplies the small intestine, although not the entire small intestine. Then part of the large intestine that it also supplies include the cecum, the appendix, the ascending colon, and also the right two-thirds of the transverse colon. So let's look at the branches that it gives to supply regions of the small intestine and also the large intestine. It gives off 5 branches, and the first one is the inferior pancreaticoduodenal artery. This is the inferior pancreaticoduodenal artery. I highlighted this artery in my lecture on the blood supply of the duodenum. If you've not also checked that lecture, please kindly go and do so. So this is the inferior pancreaticoduodenal artery, and we say that in anatomy, when we have specification in name tag, we should expect the opposite name tag. So for us to have inferior pancreaticoduodenal artery, definitely we'll be having a superior pancreaticoduodenal artery. And that, of course, emerges from branches from the celiac trunk. That we have highlighted during our lecture on the blood supply of the duodenum. But the first branch of the superior mesenteric artery will be the inferior pancreaticoduodenal artery. And if you look at the name tag, it means it gives off branches to supply the pancreas and also the duodenum. So this branch, you see it tailing up towards the duodenum, and it supplies the inferior region of the duodenum. The second branch of the superior mesenteric artery is the middle colic artery. This is the middle colic artery, and you see the middle colic artery highlighted in red here. It emerges and it gives off branches to supply the right two-thirds of the transverse colon. So the region of the large intestine that it supplies is the transverse colon, even though it is not the entire transverse colon. So if you divide the transverse part of the colon, which is the transverse colon, if you divide it into the right two-thirds and the left one-third, you will see that the right two-thirds is the region that is being supplied by branches from the middle colic artery. So it supplies this length, that is the right two-thirds of the transverse colon. Then the second branch will be the right colic artery, and this is the right colic artery. This is the right region of the abdominal cavity, and we know that in the right region is where we have the ascending part of the large intestine. So this is the ascending colon. So you see the right colic artery giving off branches to supply the ascending colon. You can see that the regions of the large intestine are gradually being taken up by the different branches from the superior mesenteric artery. And the next branch will be the ileocolic artery. And this is the ileocolic artery and the inferior part. You see it emerging from the superior mesenteric artery, and it supplies the ileum, which is the terminal part of the small intestine, and also the cecum. It also gives off branches to supply the appendix. So that is what the ileocolic artery does. Then the last branch is intestinal branches, and these are the intestinal branches highlighted in black. And they are basically the jejunal and the ileal artery. And what they supply is the jejunum and also the ileum. So those are the intestinal branches. So that is how the branches of the superior mesenteric artery emerge, and they supply different regions of the small intestine and also the large intestine. So if you look at all the branches of the superior mesenteric artery that we have listed, the entire 5 branches, just 3 out of these branches give supply to the large intestine. And it supplies not the entire large intestine, but of course specific regions. And this include the middle colic artery, the right colic artery, and also the ileocolic artery. These 3 arteries supply specific regions of the large intestine. And this include the cecum, the appendix, the ascending colon, and also the right 2/3 of the transverse colon. So you should be able to state the specific regions and also the branches from the superior mesenteric artery that give supply to these specific regions, in case you are asked during exam. Also to add that 2 out of the 5 branches of the superior mesenteric artery also give supply to specific regions of the small intestine, and this includes the inferior pancreaticoduodenal artery and also intestinal branches. These 2 branches also supply specific regions of the small intestine, not the entire small intestine, as we've stated, that it supplies the lower part of the duodenum, the jejunum, and also the ileum. The upper part of the duodenum is being supplied by branches from the celiac trunk. We should also be able to state this specificity in case we are asked during examination. Also for us to add that if you look at the pattern of formation after the arteries emerge from the superior mesenteric artery, they have unique configuration that they form before they finally terminate on the wall of the large intestine. So we have the formation of the marginal arteries. The marginal arteries are like continuous arterial circular presentation of vessels of the branches that emerge from the superior mesenteric artery, and these are the marginal arteries. So they form a circular presentation towards the wall of the large intestine, and this is called the marginal artery. From the marginal artery, we have branches that emerge, and these are called the terminal branches that finally terminate on the wall of the large intestine. These are called the vasa recta. And this is formed basically between the middle colic artery, the right colic artery, and also the ileocolic artery. So these 3 arteries, you see them forming a circular network as they emerge from the superior mesenteric artery, before we now have final terminal vessels that are called the vasa recta that are finally seen to supply the wall of the large intestine. So this is the kind of presentation seen by the arteries before they finally terminate to supply the wall of the large intestine. So they do not emerge and go directly to supply the wall. They form a circular presentation before we have the emergence of the final terminal branch that finally terminates to then supply the large intestine. So let's go to the next branch, and this is the inferior mesenteric artery. The inferior mesenteric artery emerges inferior to the superior mesenteric artery, just as the name implies. So you see it emerging at the 3rd lumbar vertebra, and this is the inferior mesenteric artery here. It emerges at the anterior surface of the abdominal aorta. This is the abdominal aorta here, this pipe, and you see the inferior mesenteric artery emerging in the anterior border of the abdominal aorta. It supplies regions of the large intestine that emerge from the hindgut during the developmental process. And this will include the remaining left 1/3 of the transverse colon, the descending colon, the sigmoid colon, the rectum, and also the anal canal. So these terminal regions are supplied by branches from the inferior mesenteric artery. So let's see the branches that emerge from the inferior mesenteric artery and how they go to supply the different terminal regions of the large intestine. So the first one is the left left colic artery. Remember, we have a right colic artery, which is a branch from the superior mesenteric artery that supplies the ascending colon. So we have the left colic artery, and this is the left colic artery. This left colic artery will go and supply the left 1/3 of the transverse colon. The left colic artery also gives off branches to supply the descending colon, which is the descending part of the colon, and that is what it supplies. And the next branch are the sigmoidal arteries, and these are the sigmoidal arteries highlighted in black. It's usually between 2 to 4 branches that emerge as the sigmoidal artery, and where they supply is the sigmoid colon. So you see them going to supply the sigmoid colon of the large intestine. Then we have the last branch, which is the superior rectal artery. This is the superior rectal artery that is highlighted in green, and as it emerges, it goes down and supply the rectum and also the upper part of the anal canal. So that is the kind of presentation that is seen by the inferior mesenteric artery. Also going to add that these arteries, as they emerge, they do not go directly to supply the large intestine, as it is presented from branches of the superior mesenteric artery. So also we have in the inferior mesenteric artery. So as they emerge, they also form marginal arteries, which are continuous circular presentation of arteries. So you see the arteries undergoing a kind of circular configuration towards the direction of the large intestine, and these are called the marginal artery. You also see the sigmoidal arteries also going up to form this circular presentation up here. So this circular presentation is called the marginal arteries. So from the marginal arteries is where we now have the final terminal branches, which are called the vasa recta, and these are the vasa recta. This vasa recta is what finally terminates onto the wall of the large intestine. That is what gives blood supply to that region. So the arteries are not seen to emerge directly and be inserted on the wall. They present a kind of configuration around this space before they are finally seen to terminate on the wall of the large intestine. So thanks for watching. Let's meet again.